we go to the ABA Tech Show every year. You want to hear been to the ABA Tech Show? And they do a sort of 60 stuff in 60 minutes at the end. I love it. You get all this information. And we thought this would be fun to share with the groups that we present with. So we did something like this at MAALL. If you anyone see us at MAALL?
Yay, new ideas.
We've updated for you guys, but that means it's all new. Great. So we thought we were going to bring it to you. What we've done is we've organized this. If you've seen one tech show, it's just like people throwing out ideas. For us, it's going to be a little more organized. So you can say, oh, this is going to apply when I do this kind of work, and this is going to apply when I do this kind of work, so you can sort of keep everything together. My name is Debbie Ginsberg. I am the Educational Technology Librarian at Chicago-Kent, and this is
Emily Barney. I am the Technology Training and Marketing Librarian at Chicago-Kent. That means I have a lot of different hats. I do things from hosting WordPress sites to teaching Microsoft Office to doing event photography and social media. So the tools that I use vary a lot accordingly.
So you can see a lot of our special tools. We talk fast, so we will definitely get through this in 60 minutes, no problem. Let's get started. We got first browser tools, that's you.
All right, everybody spends a lot of time in browsers. We are sure. Now, this is a lot of different icons. We're going to break it down by Chrome and Firefox. A lot of these are available for both of them. If you use a different browser, it's likely you might be able to search, but these are the ones that we're most familiar with. You don't need to worry about getting links. I will be tweeting things. So these are our Firefox browser extensions, and I'm going to, well, here we go. Debbie's just going to talk about one of these, and I'll talk about the other two.
The reason why is we're going to mention the others in other contexts later because they have more than one use. But I'm going to talk about Evernote again later, but one of the things I like using in my browsers is the Evernote Clipper. Anyone here use that? So you guys, it's really useful. So it lets me collect articles as I read them and read them later. So if I have a bunch of tabs open, I don't have time to read the articles, I can use the Evernote Clipper extension to save the articles for later. Not only am I saving the articles, but I'm saving just the articles, not the ads, not all the other stuff, just the articles and the information in the articles, so I get to read them in a clean environment, and it just makes my life easier. Plus, it then becomes searchable in Evernote and becomes part of any research I'm doing over there. So it is a really handy browser extension because it just helps me clean up my tabs really quickly and move on to the rest of my work.
Okay. The BS detector with the very elegant icon is one that actually came up yesterday. I don't see Chris or Carol in the room at the moment, but in the fake news session. I like using it as a quick info literacy reminder because when you turn it on, what it does as you're scanning through, for instance, Twitter or Facebook, it adds a little header at the top of certain sources that says, we think this might be clickbait, we think this might be fake news, we think this might be junk science, and it has a lot of different categories. And the nice thing is when you go to their website, you can see where they're getting this source, which I find that really helpful because then you could use that if you're teaching information literacy to say, why are these specific websites in this category? Is it because they have manipulative techniques? Is it because they're not trustworthy? Is it because they're highly biased? So it opens up room for a conversation in a way that some of the other things I don't think do as well. Debbie and I and our other research librarian have a strong tendency to open a million tabs at once because that's kind of my to-do list in the morning, just to open everything up and then close it down slowly. Sometimes this doesn't work out so well for me depending on what the site is. So one tab is essential because I can click on it and it turns everything I have open into a nice list of bookmarks. If I open up some of those, it disappears, or I can save them, I can share them, so sometimes that's useful just because I need to extract list of links.
All right, Chrome extensions.
Here we go.
All right, again, we're going to cover some of the other ones we mentioned in other contexts later in the presentation, but one thing that I use both as a Chrome extension and as a piece of software that I downloaded is Rescue Time, and I do use the paid version. As a free and a paid version, I'll mention when that exists. I was trying to see where my time was going during the day and how I could be more efficient, and Rescue Time tracks what I'm doing. And it says, oh yeah, you're spending a little time on social media, you're spending a little time on Google Docs, but man, you're spending a lot of time on emails and meetings, and maybe you want to be a little more circumspect on how much time is spent in emails and meetings. So it helps me track what I'm doing on a day-to-day, helps me track patterns over time, and helps me be just a little more cognizant of what I'm doing every day and what my priorities are. I can share it with someone if I want to. I don't have to. It's just a way for me to be more productive and more accountable to my own sense of what needs to be done.
And I'm going to mention one-click extension manager because along with having a million tabs open, I also have installed a million browser extensions, and also those get annoying, especially if I'm trying to create something for training purposes and it's adding extra stuff onto the website. Like, for instance, the BS detector doesn't necessarily need to show up in my training screenshots, so I can use this to deactivate without uninstalling, which is incredibly useful when there are certain things that I would use just for one project once in a while, but I would want to bring back. Yeah, and then these are just some extra tips we're adding to the slides. We don't have time to read them, but you can later.
We'll post the slides so you can get all the other stuff.
So, productivity. This covers a lot.
So I'm concentrating on like, how can I be more productive? What more can I do? You know, I've been in my job for a long time, so I'm always looking for new ways to approach it and new ways to help others. That's one of the questions I get a lot is, how can I be more productive? What can I do to track things a little better? And particularly when it comes to email. Who here, email can take over their entire lives? This happens to be a lot, so I've got a few tools that I like to use. I will mention, some of these tools I pay for, some of these tools are free. I've looked at them and I've decided they are okay for my use. For the free tools, you're going to have someone to evaluate, make sure they're okay for your use. Because for free tools, am I the customer or am I what's being sold? So I'm aware of this. I just know I'm willing to make a trade-off for some of these. It's just a matter of, again, what you find useful. So Active Inbox, anyone here use that? This is so incredible. Anyone here like a getting things done type person? So there are similar things for Outlook or Gmail for apps for education at Chicago Kent. When we went from Outlook to Gmail, I was really happy, except for I lost my thing that let me set priorities in my email. Like, this is an email I need to get done now, this is an email I can put off, this is an email I can delegate, because I had an add-in for Outlook. Active Inbox is a Chrome extension, a Firefox extension, different extensions for different browsers, that when I open my Gmail provides that functionality within Gmail. So I can say, okay, this is the emails I'm going to handle today, here's some emails I'm going to handle tomorrow, here's some emails I've got to remind myself to get back to next week, and here are emails I'm going to just archive and not worry about right now. And I can do that all with a few simple clicks using Active Inbox. This allows me to achieve inbox 0 every day, both in my personal email and in my workbox email. So they become much easier to manage.
Also, when we mentioned that we were going to be doing this talk, one of the law students that we befriended when she was in school and working at the school too, immediately posted, "Are you telling them about Active Inbox? It changed my life. I love it."
So Active Inbox is something you pay for, so I get the school to pay for like $35, $45 a year. You can buy it in groups, so more than 3 you can get a discount, and it's pretty nice. Recording, I use the free version. There's a paid version. And it does some of the same things as Active Inbox, like I can have emails come back to me after a certain amount of days. But the reason I use it in addition to Active Inbox is it provides 2 more things that I like in the free version. There used to be a separate thing called Inbox Pause. It's now become Boomerang. I do a lot of my work in email. And if I'm working in my email and I just see more emails come and just show up over and over, I'm going to get a little bit distracted. But I can pause for as long as I want, and then the emails don't show up and I can do my work. The other thing I can do, is actually I do my home email, is I can have an email reminder sent regularly. So I actually have one that's sent to my son every day, reminding him to do his homework, which he ignores, but I try. So it can do that. SaneBox is something I pay for. I use this on my home email, where I get lots and lots of newsletters and all this stuff, and it was just taking over my entire HomeBox email, and I was missing lots of important messages. SaneBox says, I think these are emails that maybe you just want to look at a different time, and these are the ones that are important. You can sort of train it as you want. It uses sort of an artificial intelligence to guess what you want. You can sort of say whether you're wrong or right. And let's see. And then that way I can control what emails I see when, and my HomeBox emails become a lot cleaner because I use that. So I pay like the 40-something a year for that. Unroll Me is free, and I use that on my work email where I just say, all right, here's things I never want to see again, make them go away. Here are things that I'd like to see as a daily digest. So, you know, I like getting stuff from AALL, but I want to see them once a day. So, it goes in the daily digest, and I can see it. And then here's everything else that I want to keep in my box, and it's fine. And that helps me, again, achieve my inbox 0 at work, and still gives me a digest of important things that I need to see every day. So, of course, in doing this, we want to be secure and keep security in mind at all times. So, one of the things that I like to use whenever I can is two-factor authentication to make sure that when I log into something, that there's a little extra check to make sure that it's me. Who here uses two-factor authentication? And as far as everything goes, it's not that difficult to deal with. So here's a code, turn it in. I have my phone with me. It works really well. I may also want to check in the past to make sure that despite two-factor authentication, my accounts are okay. And one of my favorite sites to check to make sure everything's okay is Have I Been Pwned? Does anyone use that? What's it do?
It lets you know if any of your information has been compromised. So like Adobe had a big one,
Yep.
and it'll list, and then if you set it up, it'll notify you from then on every time it comes across something again.
So you can set it up. You can just put in your usernames. If you have a username you use again and again, if you have an email, you can just check it out. It's a pretty easy site. It's like haveibeenpwned.com, and you can check if anything has been compromised pretty quickly and make changes as you need to.
If you have garbage passwords or individual passwords, it probably doesn't matter. But if you've ever reused an email and a password, it's even important to remember that if you were using the same password and email combination in one place and it's been compromised, then people are likely to try that combination over and over. So it's also a useful tool to show to people that you think are not probably practicing the security things, because if they see their names on there, they're likely to take it a lot more seriously just because it's alarming to look at.
Who here is familiar with the electronic
Frontier Foundation.
Frontier Foundation, EFF. So they're an organization that's trying to make sure that people get good security and good protection online. One of the tools they provided is HTTPS Everywhere, which adds an extra layer of security in your browser. This is a browser extension. You saw us mention it in the browser extension area. And it just makes, as you're using your browser, everything a little more secure. That's HTTPS as you're surfing, and it just gives you just a bit of extra security. Finally, who here can remember all their passwords off the top of their head? No? Okay. A couple of you can. So for those of you who can't, who here is using a password manager? A lot of people are now. So mine, one I liked, because I was doing this work best with Max, is LastPass. And I have one master password that I don't put anywhere else. And I can log into LastPass with two-factor authentication to make it super safe. And that way all my passwords are here. So I can have, like my Facebook password is one that I have no idea what it is. LastPass knows what it is, but I don't know what it is. Yep.
Coolest tip I ever got about LastPass was from an EFF presenter at the tech show, and she said all of those sites that want you to put in your security information, your last, mother's maiden name or anything like that, she's like, make up answers to all of those and store them in LastPass.
There you go.
So
Yeah,
don't use your
LastPass
actual answers, because
Yeah.
that can be compromised.
You can store all kinds of things, not just passwords, but information like that. Anything where you need it secure, you can put it in LastPass, and it will be there. You can you pay extra to have it on your phone, so I have it there as well, so I can do things like use my Facebook on my phone, or my Westlaw password. I don't know that either.
That's
it's in
free
LastPass.
now.
What?
They stopped charging for that. It's free now.
Oh, it's free now. Oh, it's changed. I forgot to check. Thanks for reminding me. It's free now. Yay. And it's just, it generates passwords automatically that are secure, that conform to whatever weird thing that particular site wants. Like this site says you have to have special characters. This site says you can't. LastPass just says, what do you want? I'll get you your password and you're good. Process of fire. Asana.
Yeah, so I'll talk about Asana. How many people here have used Asana? Okay, a good number of you. One of my favorite things about Asana is that you can easily customize it to whatever sorts of processes make the most sense to you, and it integrates beautifully with Gmail. So we're a Google Apps for Education institution, so everybody's using Gmail. One of the major problems we had with any kind of project management software before is that you spend almost as much time tracking what you're doing as you do doing it, and that's really not an effective use of your time. This integrates so nicely. So I'm on the social media team. We meet once a week just to look at stuff and kind of brainstorm things together. We have Asana open while we're doing that and can take notes. But then as we create projects, if we And you can also forward emails into an Asana project. It gets its own email address, and you just send it into that. So it's a complicated email address. I just save it to my contacts under whatever name I would use it for, like social media or other projects that I'm tracking in Asana. So I can forward an email into that and create a project that way. If I add people to it from Asana, it sends them an email with the description of the project, which is really helpful. And then anytime we leave a comment, whether we're doing it through that interface or whether we're replying to an email that we got, it all shows up in a nice comment thread, so it's easy to go back. It also integrates with Google Drive and Dropbox and Box and a lot of other things. So wherever you have your files stored, if you need to associate them with a project, it's really easy. We use the free version. You can get institutional ones for a certain small number of people so that you can have shared projects. But the paid version is adding new features all the time, and I think it's one of the most flexible and intuitive tools, but of course different people have different ideas of what's intuitive, so I would just, play with it a little bit and see if you can customize it. It did take us a little bit to figure out what structure for things made sense to all of us in a group, because we really wanted the project management part of it to be something we didn't think about every time we came to it.
As an individual, I use Asana every day. I have a project in there called Debbie's To-Do List, where I can sit there and prioritize. It's kind of like Kanban. This is today's, this is soon, this is stuff that I'm waiting information for. So that my short-term stuff stays in my email, and my long-term stuff goes to Asana so I can track it. And the great thing is, because I also assign everything an additional project, like this is a Panopto project, this is an institutional repository project. At the end of the year, when I have to do my self-assessment, there's so much information in Asana about what I've done. And I can add that to my report, and I can see over the year, this is what I've accomplished because it's in Asana. Any if, this, then, that people? Got a couple. And noticed over time it gets more powerful. So there are these things in this program called recipes. And the idea is if you're in one program, you can trigger something in another program. So if it is 7 a.m., then my watch gets a weather report, and I get a report of what the weather's going to be like today. If I've reached the end of the day, it counts the steps on my Fitbit and puts it into a Google Doc. So it's meant to automate processes. So if there's something you do all the time that's automated, usually you can find a recipe that can do that, or you can find a way to build it, and you can check it out. It also connects to a lot of Internet of Things type stuff, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So anything that you need automated, or any way things you can get sort of a little bit of extra, like I would love more data on what I'm doing with this device. Usually IFTTT can help with that. Any mind map people here? I've talked about it before, and I still love my mind maps. I'm still a visual person, so I'm starting and I'm doing anything that involves any kind of process, from coming up with a workflow, to writing an article, to coming up with a training session. I need to see it mapped out first, and my favorite mind mapper is Mind Manager. And it does cost, but you can't get educational discounts, so I ask my IT people, can you help me get an educational discount? They get it for me for about $100. And then I can sit there, and it's the most intuitive mind map program that I've got, where I can just start moving bubbles all over the place, and I can organize things in a way that makes sense to me. I can eliminate things, I can move ideas around, and then when I've come up with a process for my article, for my workflow, for my training, then I can move it to wherever it needs to go next. But I just love starting in the mind map, so I know where it's going. We mentioned Asana as a workflow. It is more text-based, though they're adding for the paid version a few more visuals. But again, if you are a visual person, if you need to finish your project planning in a visual place, a lot of people like Trello because it creates its project planning, its project management tools using visual cards. So you can have cards with information that lay things out one at a time. And some people really like that visual element when they're going through a process and when they're completing a project. So if you're a little more visually oriented, you might want to give Trello a try. Meetings. Who loves meetings?
Nobody.
Who loves organizing meetings? Who here uses Doodle? Use it all the time. Doodle is an online site. If I'm at work and I need to organize a meeting, let's say with Dawn and Sejal and Emily, I can use, I can go in the calendars and check our free and busy time, but if I'm trying to organize a meeting with you and you and you, and you guys are not in my calendar, then I need to know when you're free or busy. So I will send out a few times in Doodle, I will send you to a page and I'll say, pick which times work for you, and then everyone picks the times that work for them, and usually we can find one time that works. One of the best practices I find works well with Doodle, anyone gotten, or sent, I've done this too, something with like 20 different times on it, that's usually worked well. I found it better over time just to send maybe 5 to 7 times at most. Even if those times don't work, often then I can find a time with somewhere around those times. It gives every idea of what works and what doesn't. So just a few times will usually be in one Doodle list will be enough to get you to the end that you need. Occasionally, I'll need to have a meeting where I need to do screen sharing, and there are free and paid versions of this as well. So I'll use Join Me because it's an easy way to do screen sharing. Your person you're working with will download something. So if I'm just talking to 1 or 2 people and I need to do like a quick training session on WordPress or something, I may have them use this Join Me, sends them a code, and it's one of the easier tools I have for people to do some quick minimal training sessions, like where I'm just contacting a few people. Some people will do it for larger groups. I tend to use it for smaller groups. For larger meetings, I like Zoom.us. Any Zoom users here? Lots of Zoom users. I like Zoom because, one, I find it's one of the easiest things for everyone to use. Everyone seems to be able to get onto it to a problem. I've tried to set people up with Adobe Connect. Anyone find that sometimes fails spectacularly? Yeah. We don't have WebEx. We can sometimes use Google Hangouts, but there are days that works better than others. Sometimes people find it confusing, but I've had a few problems with Zoom. Zoom also, people can call in if they need to, which is nice. And I have the free version of Zoom, and the free version has pretty much all the features but what? Limited what?
Recording.
Time, how much?
40 minutes.
40 minutes, which means that if I'm setting up a Zoom meeting with you, with my free account, that meeting's only going to be 40 minutes long, and we're going to be super efficient in getting everything done. No long meetings with Zoom.us. Everything has to be done in 40 minutes.
It's a feature, not a bug.
All right, I'm an Apple user, has been since 1987. I realize some of you were born after that. So I use my Apple devices all the time. A couple things I find really useful. AirDrop, which lets me, now that the iOS is starting to have updated, lets me seamlessly just move things from one of my devices to another. So I saw that you're taking a picture of the screen. I'll do that, and if I'm taking notes on my computer, I'll just seamlessly move the picture onto my computer using AirDrop, and then add the picture to my notes, and I'm done. So that's really nice. If you want to watch your privacy settings on AirDrop, I've seen examples of, if I turn it on now, maybe I'll find some of you aren't paying attention. I might AirDrop you a picture of, hey, pay attention. A couple of professors have done that. I'll see memes about that on BuzzFeed. It must be true.
Only works if the students are using laptops and they're all on Macs. Oh, wait.
Yeah.
So that's 2/3 of your students. Wi-Fi instantly is another thing I like. That's the thing they introduced in the last version, where if I set up Wi-Fi on this device with a complicated password, then I can send that instantly to this device and this device, and vice versa, without having to retype the password at any time. Works most of the time, and has made my life a lot simpler. So those are built within the general operating systems, but there's one keyboard that I like for my iPad called my Script Stylus. The entire reason I learned to use computers to begin with is my handwriting is unreadable. So everyone's just like, well, if you take like handwritten notes, that's all better. And there's like 8 studies that show that, and a couple studies that show it doesn't. But if you are a handwriting type, you can, of course, write with your Apple Pencil and your or any stylus and your iPad. But my Script Stylus on my iPad then translates that handwriting, even my bad handwriting, into text. So it's a keyboard, I write, and everything I write becomes text instantaneously, and it's about the most useful tool I've ever heard about. Heard about the AV Tech Show just in networking a few years ago. I think I was during the academic track. It's been great.
Writing tools. So I mentioned that I'm one of the people, along with Debbie, of course, who teaches word styles in our legal writing classes. One of the things we're trying to upgrade beyond just learning how to write a formatted document without manually doing everything is getting students into looking at the metadata. I think Debbie might have told this story yesterday, so some of you may have already heard this. But one of my favorite moments was when I walked into an evening class, which they tend to be a little more savvy. A lot of them have been working in the legal field anyway. Sometimes I get people who can teach most of Word better than I can, probably, because that's their job. But the professor said, oh yeah, I can tell how many of you typed your paper on a girlfriend or boyfriend's computer. And I can say that if you didn't print it more than once, that there was a correlation. I'm not saying it's causation, but there was a correlation with the poorer grades. You might want to do a little more hands-on proofing. And the students were like, what just happened? And they said, I look at the metadata to see who the author of the file is and to see how many times it's been printed. And then the students were like, oh, how do I find this and how do I scrape it out? Because I put that in my slides all the time and they're always like, but that got their attention. But I don't automatically recommend that students learn just how to remove data from their documents. I think it's important to understand what the purpose is. And I also talk to them about the fact that once they get into a law firm, it's important to know how to use a document management system, and a lot of the information that is stored in a file that you can't see is the sort of thing that document management systems work with. And even if you don't have access to something expensive, if you know how to do some searching on a Windows PC or a Mac PC, you can take advantage of that metadata too. When I've had issues with like our library director, I started as her assistant. I've been working there for 13 years, and she was like, can you give me all of the staff charts you've ever made in order by year? And I was like, oh, okay, I can find the folder, but I can't tell from the file naming convention that I didn't invent which one was created when, but I could go into the metadata and get a better idea. The problem was when I opened the documents, a lot of them had auto dates at the top, which does not help. So if the content of the file doesn't help and the name of the file doesn't help, then the metadata often can. So just being able to convey to people some practical reasons they want to know that is helpful.
So there are 3 tools I use to help me with my writing. Some of which I've actively used and some of which I've got to test and found useful and hope to have permanently soon. One, I use the free version, but some people, there's also free paid versions that works not just in Word, but also when I'm in Gmail, is Grammarly. Grammarly helps me avoid common grammar errors and common typos and makes my emails and my documents just a little more professional. It catches a few things that Microsoft Word will miss and catches a lot of things that my Chrome browser will miss. So if I do like, IT''S when I mean ITS, Grammarly goes, did you really mean that? And no, I didn't. And that way I can send out an email where generally I can be pretty sure that what I send out is at least mostly professionally correct. I also have used WordRake to clean up my language. They're downstairs right now, and they are a really helpful tool. Used to be it was just for
They also have a tiny thing you can add to your phone to hold your business cards.
It used to be just for Windows computers. It's now coming out for Mac. So I can open up my, because I hadn't used it until I get a lot till I got to use it for my Mac. And I said, oh yeah, it really does help me clean up. It helps me find out where I'm being too wordy, where I've used jargon when I could use more clear language. There are times I was like, no, I actually kind of mean to be jargony here. That's appropriate for what I'm writing, so I don't agree with it. And other times I'm like, yeah, I could really write this more cleanly. And again, I can be a little bit more assured that my writing is good. It's just another way to have some at least computerized eyes on my writing. Finally, I'd like to finish with something called Perfect It. Anyone used this before? This is a nice thing. They've been in the ABA Tech Show, and they are also an add-in for Word, first for Windows, and I think just at the end of this month, they are going to be available for Mac as well. I've been doing the beta, and it's going to, what it does is it checks those last-minute things. They have different templates, one of which is a legal template. So it can check things like, I used court with capital C several times and court with a lowercase c several times. Did I mean to do that? No, I didn't. I want to be consistent. So it looks for consistency errors really precisely. It also can check for basic Blue Book errors. So it's a really good last-minute check to run on any computer, any document that you want to be professional. It's meant for briefs, but it can be used for other things as well. So Perfect It is my third tool in my toolbox
And the other reason why Debbie's comparing these three is we are interested in getting some of these tools available in our computer labs, especially because we have an international LLM population of students who often have really good writing skills, but because a lot of them are ESL, there may be certain types of errors that they're more prone to making, and our legal writing faculty would really like to support the grading based on their content rather than these types of errors that one population is more likely to make than another. And teaching how to manage those types of basic things is not an effective use of our legal writing instructors' time. So having something like this available in a shared space where we could encourage those students to come up and put their paper through a filter is something that we're looking into. We think that could be
a little
helpful.
more effective than some of these because these aren't necessarily meant to catch the common mistakes made by a lot of students who are learning English as a second language. Yes?
We test drove word rape a few years ago on our Windows computers because we do have such a large Mac population. It would only work on the profile in which the plugin was installed. So they may have fixed that by now, but we worked with them and we never could get it to work for multiple users on one computer.
Thanks for that warning there.
Yeah.
But at least now it's available for Macs, so those
Right.
students who have Macs can now have the option. And we've been talking about ways to get people discounts as well.
Yeah.
So again, this is personal use, and we're trying to figure out how to make it more global.
Yep.
But thanks for that warning.
Yep. Okay. All right, we've got keyboard shortcuts. Again, this is just bonus content. Come back and look at our slides. We don't have time for everything that we like to push at people. Training, we do a lot of training like this right now. So these are some of the tools. I did a talk last year, so a lot of these might be familiar. I've updated a little bit. Oops, forgot to rescale something. My mouse stopped working, so some of the fine details are missing, but I talked a lot about Flickr Commons, which is something that you can get a lot of public domain images, especially if you're looking for older ones. That's really nice. These last three are things, this makes my life so easy. You can get them as add-ons to Google Slides, which is what I'm using right now. So I just pop open an add-on and I start dropping things in. For Unsplash, those are beautiful, professional grade quality photos, very modern. The only disclaimer I would say about Unsplash is because they are free and because they are beautiful, they are likely to be reused endlessly. So if you're doing something like a blog and you want to make sure that yours looks unique, you won't necessarily get that, but they're really handy when we're doing something like a quick social media, good luck students, and we just want like a thumbs up or something like that, some general picture that illustrates a concept that we don't have an image for, and we want it to look nice and as a throwaway thing.
And
I also use it.
domain.
Yeah, well, yeah, they are released as a copyright-free tool by the photographers. One interesting thing I found is that the last time I checked for something like office or study as a keyword, I found that Google Chromebooks was like sponsoring beautiful photography of their laptops as free stock photography so that their laptops would appear beautifully for everyone. But it has a lot of content. So it might be reused, it might become familiar images, but they are really nice. And you can get it as a Google Slides add-on without much trouble. You do need a fast connection. I found that when I'm on Wi-Fi or trying to do something, you can't use it on like your phone version, but it's very nice. The Noun project is something that you can use for free to download black or white, I think just black, right? Icons usually, maybe white ones, but to add colors to them, which is what I've done up in those top corners, and customize it, you need an account. They do have an academic account for about $20, $25. So that's not a lot. That's very justifiable for the number of times I need a really quick short image to put into things. I like using them more for things like this, handouts or slides or something like that, rather than like social media. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to use an icon. But the Noun project, as you might guess from the name, is basically things, sometimes concepts, but they have a lot. Font Awesome is something that's actually a free web font that you probably have run across a lot of times and not realized, because a lot of websites now are using it for icons. But they also have things like social media icons, which would be hard to find on some of the other things. And you can install it as a font on your computer locally. You can use it as a web font on websites if you need to, and they also have an icon add-on for Google Slides. Yes?
For illustrations or photographs, Library of Congress is one I've gone to a lot.
It's
It's not everything public domain.
Yeah, and it really isn't. You can find a lot of Library of Congress stuff through Flickr Commons. I'm recommending these because they are fast, they are easy to search. Library of Congress I love, but their website is not as intuitive.
How does Flickr Commons relate to Wikimedia? Which,
A lot of Wikimedia content is sourced from Flickr Commons, but the Flickr Commons stuff is coming directly from the source. The reason I like Flickr Commons over Wikimedia, although I do use that sometimes, I mentioned it in last year's presentation, which I can retweet at some point, but they have a lot more of the metadata in a very nice format, and you can use all the Flickr add-on tools. If you set up an account, it's just a free Yahoo thing, to bookmark or tag and organize what your research. So I have a lot of galleries under my account that are things that people ask me for regularly, so pictures of law and legal symbols, like the Supreme Court images, or gavels, or statues of blind justice, things like that, that I just need as generic, hey, I'm in a law school. These are the types of illustrations we need. So you are all welcome to find my Flickr account, which has like 15,000 photos of my own. Most as Creative Commons. You can use my weird travel photos if you want. Most of it's food photos, though, so that might be boring. Noun Project and these two are very similar, so I find that really useful to use them in combination when I can find one thing for one source and not the other. Creating illustrations. Canva is also something that I mentioned last year. It's really, really nice and really, really intuitive. If you are somebody who sometimes has to do things like create posters or create flyers or create business cards or anything like that where you're like, I'm not a graphic designer, but I now have to do this thing really quickly. Canva has beautiful templates. They have a lot of stored free that you can sort of get. I've showed law professors how to do this, and they were up and running within a few minutes. They came back to me later with like, hey, does this look nice? Could you help me tweak it? Just for a confidence booster, but they've done a good job. A few tricks that I think I mentioned last year in terms of adding some transparency if you have an image that doesn't have text contrast. So anything with accessibility you do need to think about in terms of design. If you find something nice, do think about how easy it is to read. But for Canva, the nice thing is it has a free desktop website or browser version, and it also has an app version. I don't find the app version to be as easy to do the fine-tuning if I'm doing something like changing out the font or switching a layout or something like that. But they also have a lot of pre-designed templates, sizes for social media. So if you're the sort of person that occasionally has to make something for Instagram or Twitter and you're not sure if your picture is going to get cropped in a weird way, if you start there, it makes it really nice because it not only does it in the right formats, but the exact right size when you download it. And being able to install it as an app on your phone makes it a lot easier to grab it and put it up on Instagram really quickly. The other thing is if you don't see resources in there or you want to use your own customized coloring or branding or images, you can upload content to it as well, and it has a lot of free web fonts that you can use to kind of come up with a standardized branding. So let Debbie do the others.
I read that article for the double Spectrum last year on blockchain that included a comic. I created the comic on my iPad using the Comic Draw app, which is one of the easiest illustration apps I've ever used. And it was meant for creating comics. You can create complex ones like I did or simple ones. It's got ways of putting in a script and then putting in word balloons and putting in all the panels, and it's got layers where I can add pencils and inks and colors. So it's one of the easiest layer-based, which means I'm working on one thing at a time and I can make things go away. I use reference photos so I can put them in, work from them, and then make them go away as I need to. So it's just a great way, not just for...
FYI, that means tracing, not drawing.
I've done a lot of tracing, but I've traced really well. I've used it my kids have used it to make comics too, so it's great for anything from professionals to people who are just learning and just want to create something in a hurry. It does cost money, about $20. Sometimes it goes on sale, and so look for that. And it's a really powerful illustration program. But one of the things here I cannot live without is Snagit. I literally use this every single day. Oh, I'm not sure how X works. Here is a screenshot of X. I can then use Snagit to add texts and call-outs, and I can blur things out, and I can add borders, and then I make a great illustration that's describing step A, step B, step C. Here it is. Here's how you log into Twin. go ahead and just do it. And of course, this twin frame changed last week. That didn't, but if it did, I could just do another Snagit picture and they've got it. So I'm constantly taking screenshots and other things with Snagit. This doesn't work. Here's the thing that's broken. Here, vendor, please fix it. So it's available for both Windows and Mac, and it just sits there in the corner until I need it. And I say, take a picture. I can put it on delay if I need to get a menu up, and then it's all set. It's easy, simple. And
It is a paid tool, but it is so worth it.
you do have to pay for it, but it is worth it. Here, if I got Snagit users in here, they will also attest on just how useful this tool is.
Very intuitive. Quizzing tools. We'll try to move fairly quickly through some of these. Google Forms. How many people have used Google Forms? How many people are aware that you can do grading with Google Forms now? Has anybody tried it? How many people send, if you're in a Gmail, Google Apps for Education environment, have you sent Google Forms via email? We find that the response rate is astronomically higher if the form is embedded in the email, especially if it's a simple, quick question. So when I'm doing a training in a class, I like to send out a formative assessment, to use the proper language, quiz to them to say, are you familiar with this topic? Have you used it before? And what type of computer do you have? Because I want to do a hands-on session and I want to walk in having some idea. The nice thing with Google Forms, of course, it's part of Google Drive, so then all of the data can be stored in a spreadsheet. I can make charts from that spreadsheet and have them embedded in my Google Slides, so all the pieces talk to each other. And then when I walk in, I can say, here's the results from what you told me. And then as I'm speaking, it'll be obvious, like, okay, so it's 60% Mac users. I'm sorry, PC users, but that's why I'm using a Mac while I'm doing this presentation, because I'm responding to the number of people in the room. If you didn't respond and you had a PC, then I'm sorry, I didn't have that information. Panopto, anybody here have Panopto as your video tool?
I do.
Has anybody played with the quizzes?
So one of the things we have is Panopto quizzes, and the great thing with that is you can, your students can be watching the video, and then, there's a quiz, and they have to take the quiz. You can get the results of the quiz. You can say the students cannot continue on the video until they finish the quiz. And then you can add multiple of these per session. It's fairly easy to use. They're making it better all the time. In fact, tomorrow, they're going to do their next release. And right now, one of the problems with quizzes is I can, if I understand this correctly, I can get the quiz on here on my computer, but I can't see it on here or embedded videos. And as of the release that comes out tomorrow, for those of us with the version that is hosted by Panopto, we're going to be able to get the quizzes on all the devices, which is going to make it just that much better experience for our users and for our students. Just to sort of remind you it exists, but you hear about these all the time. There are plenty of mobile and other devices and other apps for doing quizzes. So I've got Socrative up here. And some of you use Poll Everywhere. CALI Instapoll got mentioned yesterday. I saw that in a tweet. So remember that there's all kinds of ways just to do in-class quizzes that you may find useful. But that's for a whole other CALI session. I just want to sort of make a little hat tip towards them as we move on to our other training.
So a lot of the things we like to do, and I think I mentioned this in Claire's program, is how do you take something that you've already been doing and turn it into a video guide? When we're teaching faculty how to create videos, that's by far the most appealing process for them. We use Panopto to do a lot of that screencasting stuff, but a couple things that we use to upgrade, whether it's a video that we get from a classroom recording or it's something that somebody does at their desk, one of the most common problems with video stuff is the audio recording might have background noise or a little bit of a hiss and pop kind of thing. Audacity is a free audio editor that's very easy to, if you extract the audio from a video file, put it in there, find a spot that's silent and sample that, and then you can have it do a noise reduction filter. That's something that a lot of the video editors don't include, but it improves the quality of your videos and people's engagement with it a lot if they can listen to it, because not everybody's going to watch a video. A lot of people have things playing in the background. So if you're doing video editing, I highly recommend prioritizing high quality audio. If you're starting off creating your own video guides, get a good quality microphone. Get a pop filter. We like the Yeti microphones.
You can use Audacity to slow down the world to say Yanny, but that's it.
Camtasia is another TechSmith product. It's something like Snagit, which does screen captures, it does screen recording. If we're doing something more complicated, it's also a pretty easy video editor. So if I'm doing something beyond what Panopto editing allows, I like to use Camtasia more than a lot of the other video editors we've played with. And it has education pricing.
Yeah, which makes it nice. If you are finding yourself you want to do things on a mobile device, particularly on an iPad, or just explain something really quick and just draw it out, and you can see the idea in your head, you just want to draw it out with a pencil and then record that. There are apps for that. One of them is Explain Anything. This is the one my children use. They love that. They use this all the time to do homework. There are similar ones like Whiteboard and Show Me. But again, just wanted to mention that these things exist on a mobile platform as well. Though generally, if I'm going to do training, I too am going to go to Camtasia.
Great. Okay, so web design. Not everybody does web design, but everybody works on the web, right? So a few things that can help. I think it's useful to think of accessibility not just in terms of people with extreme disabilities that have very limited ways of interacting with web content, but also think about yourself. There are times I worked full-time while I got my graduate degree online in the evening. My eyes were tired by the end of the day, and I didn't want to look at endless PDFs. So I found out that in Adobe Acrobat, I could have it read to me. There's a lot more tools available now that do that. Instapaper is one of them. It's also handy because you can just email a link to or forward it on your devices and have it download it so that you can read it offline. So if your train doesn't always have consistent internet access, or if you just want to be able to read something and get it on your Wi-Fi without using your data, that's also really handy. It does not work for anything that requires a login, so you can't use it to get stuff out of a library database, for example, and forward it, or anything that would have some sort of pop-up if there's a site that wants you to log in for your newspaper access or something like that. It needs to be open on the web.
All right, I too, my eyes get tired, or just sometimes I like having things read to me rather than try to read something, particularly if the article's not greatly written. So I will use the Chrome text-to-speech feature a lot. But of course, I don't want to bother going around me, so I use headphones, and these MAALL headphones. MAALL has some cheap $35 Bluetooth headphones. I just make sure they're charged. They last for a couple days. I connect it to my computer, and it just reads with great sound, and it's just a cheap way to have instant access. And with Bluetooth headphones, I can get up and walk around.
Totally is something I mentioned last year for visual. It also works for audio. It's a really nice, simple bookmarklet. You go to the website and you kind of drag and drop it into your bookmark bar, and then you can click on it, and it will analyze any website that you're looking at and tell you what sort of accessibility issues pop up right away. So really fun to just test your own website. It will show you common things like, for someone who's visually impaired, do you have alt text on your images? It will also show you what the structure of the website would look like if somebody had something that was reading the website to them. Is your website set up so that they don't have to listen to a bunch of repetitive stuff before they get to the actual meat and potatoes of your website? So it's really easy to use, really intuitive, and also helpful if you're trying to tell somebody else why accessibility matters, because unlike having to install a lot of very careful software, this lets you really quickly review and see. It's a little, quick empathy tool. What would this look like to someone else? We have a couple other add-ons that I think I've added in the list of Chrome add-ons that help with things like color blindness and stuff like that. What would the web look like if you were colorblind? I put that in the browser extension list.
VoiceStream is an iOS app. I use it on my iPhone and on my iPad. It can download PDFs and read them out loud, and I get a lot of control. I can control the voice. I can control the speed. I can even control pronunciation if I want to get to that level of specificity when I'm having PDFs read out loud. So last year, I actually had to download the entire King James Bible and read it out to me out loud so I could finish the whole thing and say, all right, I've got through it from Genesis to Revelation, and I've got the whole thing down. So it's a really incredible PDF reading device.
Great. These are a little bit more stuff that I play with. When I'm having an initial conversation with somebody who wants to set up a website and design it to look nice, a lot of times they don't have a lot of vocabulary for design tools, or they want to evaluate what somebody else has done. So I like to look at things that kind of group stuff into bits and pieces that are helpful. So Adobe Color is something that you can use to quickly look at color palettes that are used online. It shows you the hex codes, it shows you the CMYK codes, it lets you customize it yourself. It's something that's tied into Creative Suite online, but you can use it individually. It's just kind of fun to play around with if you like color palettes. Built With is a really quick website where you can paste in any URL and find out, is this a Squarespace or Wix website? Is this a WordPress or Drupal website? Is this a custom website? Who's the host? What are the plugins that they're using? So since I do a lot of WordPress sites, that's helpful for me to quickly say, oh yeah, it's a WordPress site, that's what I thought. Here's the name of the theme. Is it a publicly available one? Have they customized it with any plugins that I might want to play with? And just paste it in and kind of browse through the results. Eyedropper is a Chrome add-on that I use when I'm trying to reverse engineer color, which can be something that is a pain in the neck to do if you have to have like Photoshop or something like that to sample a color. This is much faster. So sometimes I use it because I'm trying to set up a website and I can customize the link color and I want it to match something that's in a photo or a logo. Sometimes it's because I just need to make sure that I am actually using the one that's in the branding guide. Google Fonts, of course, is mostly free. I think they list some things now that aren't free, but if you can find out what a font is and then you can download it, you can use it on the web, you can use it in Google Slides. So when I'm doing something that's kind of, I put this as design research, but I think you could also call it branding research. Some of these tools are applicable in other contexts as well.
All right, we're at 10 minutes. I think we can do this.
Yeah, all right,
So,
last stuff.
wow, so who here does research? We all do research. So I'm going to give you some tools for citing and bookmarking and archiving, just some of the things I find that make my research job a little easier. Sort of out of order, but that's because now we put it in alphabetical order, so it's like, oh, this is where I memorized it. All right, this came up the other day, Memento Web, where you can go to a website and see what it looked like, and it goes back to the Internet Archive and takes a look at it, but it also exists as a browser extension, which then you can then say, oh, I'm on this website, and I'd like to see what it looked like using my browser extension. So that can make that process a little bit easier because I don't have to go to a separate place to get that done. There's a whole thing here on PermaCC. I think a lot of you went to that. So you all know that it's here for, I didn't go to that, but I use it all the time to help with link rot. It does, so link is when, that's when something, you cite to something, anyone been in a situation where you cited to something and you put the link out there and then the link died? And this at least gives you a place to keep certain information permanently. Now it's good for articles that are not behind paywalls, so it's not great for everything, but it can, if you cite it to a government website, you could, an article on the government website, you could put it in PermaCC and someone could see it later. If you're citing to an Excel file or a video, PermaCC is not that tool for you, but do keep it in mind. A lot of law reviews are using it in order to try to control the link rot in their own articles. So Chicago Camp Law Review started to use it recently, and many others. And it's really easy to train the staff on getting it done, and it's getting better all the time. Unpaywall can be useful. You come across something, it's like, gosh, there's got to be a free version of this article. It's otherwise going to cost me $65 to download. Unpaywall is a browser extension that says, yeah, actually one exists in a repository over here, and now you can get this version for free. So take a look at it. Then there is my big powerhouse, Zotero. Here's a Zotero, I never remember how to pronounce Zotero user. And that's what I use for focused research projects. So I save like sort of things I want to keep in general in Evernote, but if I'm working on something like my blockchain work, that's when I'm going into Zotero, because I can be there in my browser and I can say, okay, save whatever this is I'm looking at right now into Zotero. It saves PDFs, it saves links to things, it can even save screenshots or at least the content of articles. And then I can then start organizing it. I can organize it into folders. I can organize it with tags. I can put notes on it. I can add files to it. And then I can say, all right, I've got a Zotero account, and then I can sync it across computers. So I'm working on a blockchain presentation for Monday, and I've got I've got my links on my computer work. Oh, and I've got them here as well, so I can continue my work no matter where I am. This is for power research, power use. I do mention to students every once in a while. My power students really like it. Other students look for other things like PowerNote, which is downstairs, for their research. So it's one of the many tools, but this is the one I use for really keeping my research organized.
Right. Have you tried the new skin for legal research, MJuris, I think it's called?
I have not. Most of my research is tech research, so I have not tried that. Do you know a little bit about it?
Basically, it tries to recognize legal type citations.
Oh, cool.
So the ways that Zotero can recognize APA versus MLA. It supposedly can do the same thing for Blue Book, and it's built specifically for legal research and multilingual research.
Oh, nice. So there are lots of tools. Yeah, Zotero can do a little bit with, Blue Book as well, though. It's just a start. As I mentioned, Evernote. I've got some Evernote users here. Just great for organizing things in general, or if I'm just taking notes in a meeting, or I have a snapshot of something and I want to be able to access it later, because it's just so searchable. If I take a picture of something and I put it in Evernote, and it's got text on it, then the text becomes searchable, so it's great. Digo, however, that's Emily's baby.
Anybody use Digo? It's been around for over 10 years. It has survived. That says something. They do have paid versions now. I haven't paid for it, but I've been using it since, over 10 years. I actually had a nightmare once that it disappeared. That's how much of a nerd I am. Where did the information go? I organized all the links for this presentation, links to every single Chrome app, browser app, everything. And I will tweet that out shortly. So you can do a lot with it, tagging, organizing links. You can set up groups and digests and things like that if you want to share links around a specific topic with different people. It was kind of set up to be a social network for information sharing back when they were doing social networks around really specific topics. They do have discounts for educators, and I think even with a free educator access, you get a little bit higher level of tools, so it's worth checking for that. I think you have to send them an email with an EDU account to get back access to that.
Right. All right, so we've got 5 minutes, but we can do this. All right, so Goodreader. So I got faculty members who say, I just want to mark up my PDFs and keep them all organized on my iPad. I just want to use my iPad as my PDF reader and markup device, and show them Goodreader, and suddenly I have very happy faculty members because they can mark it up all kinds of ways, and they can put the PDFs in from a variety of resources and put them in folders. And it's just, if you are working with PDFs and you want to work on a mobile device, this is one of the best tools I've found for doing that. The other thing I find I have to do sometimes is I might be working with something in print, and I want to be able to get a copy that then has OCR, optical character reader, and then put it into wherever it is I want it to go. My favorite app for that is Scanner Pro. I just take a picture of something with my iPad or my iPhone. It balances out, it makes it look good, so it gets all the margins correct. And then I've got it as a document, it's OCR'd, and then I can email it, I can save it to Dropbox, I can put it all kinds of places. So that's just a great things for scanning something really quickly. I don't have to walk all the way over to the scanner. I can just do it right from my desk, and I'm all set.
Okay, our favorite stuff, the miscellany. Most of these, I will say really quickly, check your public library because Cloud Library, Hoopla, and Overdrive all have access to audiobooks. You can speed up the audiobooks as you're reading if you like to hear it as the place that Debbie and I speak, or if you can slow it down if you don't like that. LibriVox is an unusual one. How many people have heard of LibriVox? So, do you like public domain books before 1920 something? If you do, LibriVox is a collaborative project, kind of like Project Gutenberg was back in the day, that was working on digitizing those materials into lots of different text formats. You can actually search on a lot of your podcasting apps for specific books and find things from LibriVox. You can also go to their website. I do recommend hearing a sample first, because sometimes there's just somebody reading it in a style that you don't like. My family was on a road trip, and we decided to get the book that we were going to visit, the home where it was written, Little Women. And most of it was great. It was an ensemble recording that people did long distance and then pieced together. So clearly people put a lot of time into this. It was all great except for one person's voice was totally wrong. But it was free, so we're not complaining. Social media, this is a lot of the stuff that I do. It's what I've been using today. Buffer is what we use when we're sharing to multiple platforms and you want to make a small change for each platform and make sure it looks as good as possible. It's easy to schedule things in advance. You get short links that you can share out and kind of track how people are using it. Lightroom is what I use for photo editing. I know not everybody's a photo person that has to do event photography, but if you ever do have to process a lot of images and make edits in bulk, this will save your life because all of the edits are stored separately. You fiddle around with the sliders to make the lighting the way you want, and then you can copy and paste them onto every other photo that was taken the same way. You can also do the same with things like metadata, so you can add to images, titles, descriptions, tags, dates, all of those things get stored into the files then when you export them. And I have a couple add-ons that I can export them to Google Drive, I can export them to Facebook, and all of that work is only done once instead of the manual work of putting albums together and doing that over and over. It is a paid product, and at this point I think you have to get it with Creative Suite, but if you do this type of work very often, it's very helpful. You can't store it on a network like the library that it creates, all that database, because it's stored separately from the files. You can't store that on a network drive, so you do need to have a computer that has enough space or a backup drive for it, but I love it. Facebook Debugger is just a really quick tip. If you're ever producing content for the web that you want to be shared online and you want it to look like those nice things that come up with the image and the title and you want to double check that it looks right, just copy and paste the link into Facebook Debugger and it will scan for that. If you've ever published something on like your library blog or something like that and you've gone to publish it online, didn't have a picture and you thought you set it up to do that, it might be because their Open Graph Scanner didn't grab it yet. You can force it to grab it here, and then you can go back and edit something if the title shows up wrong, if it's your own content, and put it back in, and then anybody who shares it will get the content that you saw. So we use that constantly. TweetDeck is something Debbie likes.
I use it, it's from Twitter, I use it in my browser, so I can see a bunch of things on Twitter at once. So if you see me tweeting at this conference, I'll have my main Twitter open, and then I'll have the search for the CALI hashtag, and then I'll have mentions, and also other things. I can have multiple Twitter accounts going on at once. So if you just want a lot of information about Twitter, all in one space, TweetDeck is really helpful. Finally, I think we're going to end on our gadgets, or my gadgets actually. So I sacrificed my privacy with the Internet of Things, so you don't have to. So some fun gadgets I've been playing with lately. One is Philips Hue. It's something to control my lights. And it's a matter of, that way I can make sure lights are on or off. So when I go to bed at night, I say, "Hey Siri, good night." And then Siri turns off all my lights, and it's really convenient. Plus I have a color one where I can like make the lighting however I want. For the black and white buttons, you can dim it whatever you want. The color, I can make it from fascinating to garish. It's kind of fun. I have, in my house, for reasons, I have 2 HVAC systems which are controlled with Nest thermostats. So I can have control over these at any time. I know how much is being used. I can keep track of things. I can keep the data. For example, I noticed someone had been setting the heat up to 79 when I wasn't there, and I was able to talk to this person, and the heat does not go up to 79, and I know it's when you're there, and you can't do that. Thanks. Because I can see that thing. Finally, I lose things all the time. It's like my keys or my wallet. So I have Tile. I gave my son Tile because he was constantly losing his keys in the morning. Tile, I then hit something on my phone. I say, find it. It makes little dingy noises until it shows up. The other thing is like, oh, did I leave my wallet at home or did I drop it somewhere? I look, I say, oh, my wallet's last location. It's my home address. I left my wallet home today. I don't have to worry about it. Finally, while I do not have the Internet of Things version of this, I was told I had to add this back. Originally, I had a different device, but the Instant Pot. Who are my Instant Pot users? Instant Pot. Okay, so I didn't know I was joining a club or a club when I bought an Instant Pot off of Amazon a couple years ago when it came up on Amazon Prime Day, which is coming up, for under $100. I said, oh, finally, I can get a pressure cooker that's electric, so I don't have to worry about it. I can leave because I have children that get in fights. And I can just cook things in it. And I found it to be spectacular. Hard-boiled eggs that come out consistently every time without anyone arguing about the best way to do it. I can do entire chickens that are cooked exactly perfectly every time. My coworker uses it to make curry sauces and soups and just for dinner all the time, and it's just an amazing device for kitchen efficiency. And one of the things you can all do at the end, now that we're done, is share some of your favorite Instant Pot tricks. You got one?
I like it because you can cook dry beans without soaking them overnight.
Yes, dry beans without soaking overnight. Yep.
Yogurt.
Yogurt is the big thing. Everyone makes their own yogurt. It's become like the yogurt thing. Any other Instant Pot things you want to share before we go?
Like sweet potatoes.
Yes. Sweet potatoes.
They're so good.
Applesauce. Homemade applesauce in minutes in your Instant Pot. So wait till it goes on sale on Amazon Prime or buy it from Kroger. There's 3 versions, a 3-quart version for small things, 6 quarts for most days, and my coworker says, I need my 8-quart version for company, of course. So got various sizes to meet various different needs. Enjoy the gadgets. Enjoy all the things we provided for you today. Help you find something.
And you can check my Twitter handle, which is eBarney, or you can go to these short links if you want to take a quick picture of it or something.
for a second.
Yep.
Did you get your money's worth?
I'll mention also.
Wait, we're supposed to pay?
Overdrive also has Libby now.
Yeah, we do Libby, but
Yeah.
we ran out of time. So Libby is another version of Overdrive with a better interface. I like it better. So I used, because of my commute, I do a lot of audiobooks. I did 100 audiobooks last year because all free through my library with Cloud Library, with Overdrive/Libby, with Hoopla, and one more called Access 360. Yep.
Pocket also.
Yes, Pocket's another one.